She was working herself to death. In the fields, the cowboy said, "Let me carry that load," Cowboy's true love. Winter came early that year, the kind that didn't announce itself with snow at first, but with silence. The fields lay stiff and gray beneath a sky stretched thin as old linen. Frost clung to the earth in the mornings, whitening the broken stalks like bones left too long in the open. The wind had teeth now. It cut through wool and denim alike, carried whispers from faraway mountains, and settled deep in the joints of men who'd learned to measure time by pain. She was out there before the sun, every morning, bent low between rows that no longer wanted to give anything back. Her name was Clara Mayfield, though most folks had forgotten it. Around these parts, she was just the widow woman, the quiet one, the girl who don't stop. She worked the rented fields at the edge of Black Hollow like the land owed her something, or like she owed the land her life. Maybe both. Her breath came out in pale ghosts as she drove the hoe into frozen soil, again and again, fingers wrapped in torn cloth, knuckles red and split. The ground was hard, unforgiving, but she didn't curse it. She never did. She only worked until her shoulders burned, worked until her back screamed, worked until the world narrowed down to breath, ache, and the next movement, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. The farmhouse behind her stood half-collapsed, leaning like an old man too tired to stand straight. Its windows were dark, its door hung crooked. Inside were echoes she didn't visit anymore. Laughter once, boots by the hearth, a man's coat still hanging on a nail it hadn't earned the right to occupy. Winter had taken him 2 years ago. A fever, a night of shaking, a morning of stillness, and left her with debt, land that wasn't hers, and a body that learned quickly how much pain it could carry without breaking. She wiped her nose on her sleeve and straightened, just for a moment, one hand pressed to her lower back. The horizon was pale, the sun trying but failing to warm the day. She told herself she'd rest when the row was done. She always did. That was when the sound came. Hooves, slow, measured, not in a hurry. She stiffened. Strangers were rarely kind out here. They wanted something, land, work, a favor they didn't plan on returning. Clara didn't turn right away. She finished the row, set the hoe down, then faced the road. He sat astride a chestnut horse, reins loose in his gloved hand, broad shoulders, heavy coat dusted with frost, a scarf pulled up high around his neck. The brim of his hat shadowed his eyes, but not the way he watched her. Quiet, steady, like he'd been standing there longer than she realized. Cowboy. That was the first thing her mind offered. Not a drifter, not a ranch hand. A cowboy in the old sense. The kind that moved like the land had shaped him. He tipped his hat slightly when she finally looked at him. "Morning," he said. His voice was low, worn smooth by cold air and long rides. She nodded once. "If you say so." He glanced at the field, at her hands, at the way she stood like her bones were holding each other together out of habit. "That's a lot of work for one person," he said. She shrugged. "Work don't ask how many you are." A corner of his mouth twitched, not a smile exactly, more like recognition. "I'm Eli Turner," he said. "I've got a line cabin north of here. Saw smoke some mornings. Thought I'd introduce myself." She didn't offer her name. People who stayed didn't ask. People who asked didn't stay. He seemed to understand. Silence settled between them, filled only by the wind moving through dead grass. His horse shifted, breath steaming. Clara picked up her hoe again. "Well," she said, "you've introduced yourself." He didn't move. Instead, he swung down from the saddle. Her grip tightened. "I didn't come to trouble you," Eli said, sensing it. "Just noticed." "Noticing don't keep a roof up," she replied. "No," he agreed, "but helping might." She laughed then, short, sharp, humorless. "Helping costs." "So does not," he said gently. He stepped closer to the field, boots crunching on frozen dirt. She blocked his path without thinking, the hoe held crosswise like a warning. "I don't take charity." "I didn't offer charity." "Then what are you doing?" Eli looked at her, really looked. Her face was young but worn, like something once soft left too long in the weather. There was stubbornness there, and exhaustion, the kind that didn't go away with sleep because sleep came too late and ended too early. "You're working yourself to death," he said quietly. "That's my business." He nodded. "Fair." Then after a beat, he said the words that changed everything. "Let me carry that load." The wind seemed to pause. She stared at him like he'd spoken another language. "Excuse me?" He gestured toward the hoe, the field, the house, her hands. "Just for today," he said. "You don't owe me tomorrow." Her chest tightened. Men didn't offer just for today. They offered and expected. They smiled and took. They helped and reminded you of it later. "I don't know you," she said. "I know. I didn't ask. I know that too." "Then get back on your horse." He didn't. Instead, he stepped past her, took the hoe gently from her grip before she realized she'd let it go, and walked into the row. He set his feet, adjusted his gloves. Then he started working. The movement was practiced, strong. The earth resisted, but he leaned into it, shoulders rolling, breath steady. Each strike was deliberate, like he wasn't fighting the land, just speaking firmly to it. Clara stood there, useless hands hanging at her sides, heart pounding with something dangerously close to panic. "You can't just—" she started. "I can," he said, not stopping. "And I am." Snow began to fall then. Not heavy. Just a few flakes at first, drifting slow, settling on his coat, her hair, the dark earth between them. Winter, finally deciding to show its face. She watched him work until her eyes burned, not from the cold, from the way no one had stood in her place since her husband was buried, from the way the field looked different with another body in it, from the terrifying thought that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do everything alone. She turned away before he could see her face. "Don't think this means anything," she said. Eli paused long enough to look up. "Means something to me," he said. "That's enough." And under the falling snow, with the fields breathing white and the house watching from behind, Clara Mayfield stood still for the first time in years. Winter pressed in from all sides, but for the first time, it didn't feel like it was trying to kill her. Winter did not ease up after that first snowfall. It settled in like it planned to stay. By the third morning, the fields were locked beneath a thin shell of ice, the earth hard as old regret. The creek behind the house slowed to a whisper, its edges sealed with glassy frost. Smoke rose thicker from the chimney now, darker, as if the house itself had learned how to ask for warmth again. Eli came back the next day. Clara saw him before she heard him this time, his shape moving through the pale dawn, horse left tied at the fence line, boots crunching slow and respectful across the frozen ground. He carried no hoe today, just a coil of rope over one shoulder and a bundle of firewood under the other arm. She stood in the doorway, coat pulled tight, watching him approach. "I didn't say you could come back," she said. "You didn't say I couldn't," he replied. She hated that he was right. He set the wood down by the wall, stacking it neat, like he knew the house's habits already. When he straightened, his breath steamed hard in the cold. "Roof's leaking," he said, glancing up. "East side." Her jaw tightened. "I know. I can fix it." "I didn't ask." He nodded, like that answer fit somewhere he expected. "I'll do it anyway. Snow's coming tonight." She turned away so he wouldn't see the tremor in her mouth. "Suit yourself," she muttered. He did. By midday, he was on the roof, hammer ringing steady through the cold air. Clara worked below, splitting kindling, cleaning the stove, anything to keep her hands busy. Every sound from above made her tense. She wasn't used to hearing someone else take responsibility for the bones of the place. When a plank slipped and clattered down, her heart jumped into her throat. "You alive?" she called. "Mostly," he answered. "Ask me again in 10 minutes." She huffed, despite herself. He stayed until dusk. They didn't talk much, didn't need to. He fixed the roof, reinforced the sagging fence, dug a shallow trench to guide meltwater away from the foundation. All quiet competence. No speeches, no looks that lingered too long. When he finally wiped his hands on his coat and reached for his hat, the sky had turned the color of bruised steel. "Thank you," she said, the words stiff but honest. He paused, surprised enough to show it. "You're welcome." Then he hesitated, like he was standing at the edge of something he didn't want to cross without permission. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said carefully, "if that's all right." She didn't answer right away. The wind picked up, carrying the promise of heavier snow. "Tomorrow's fine," she said. That night the storm came in earnest. Snow piled high against the door, whispering along the walls. The house groaned, old boards shifting as the cold tightened its grip. Clara lay awake long after the fire burned low, staring at the ceiling where new patches shone darker, holding. She thought of Eli out there somewhere in the dark, alone like she was, and for the first time in a long while she didn't feel quite so hollow. Days passed that way. Eli came every morning, sometimes with tools, sometimes with food, salt pork, beans, a sack of flour he pretended he had extra of. Clara argued less each time, the protests wearing thin under the weight of exhaustion and cold. He never stayed the night, never crossed a line she didn't draw first. That mattered more than she could explain. They worked side by side now, clearing what could be salvaged from the fields, tending the animals she'd kept alive through sheer stubbornness, mending things that had broken slowly enough she'd learned to ignore them. One afternoon, while patching a tear in the barn wall, Clara's hands began to shake. At first she thought it was the cold. Then the hammer slipped from her grip and fell into the snow. She stared at it, breath coming too fast. Eli was beside her in a heartbeat, hands steady but not touching. "Clara." She hated how he said her name, like it mattered. "I'm fine," she snapped. "You're not." "Don't." Her knees buckled. He caught her before she hit the ground, arms solid around her. One hand braced at her back, the other gripping her shoulder. She stiffened, then sagged, the fight draining out of her all at once. He didn't speak, just held her until the shaking passed. When she finally pulled back, her face burned with shame. "I don't need rescuing," she said. "I know," he replied, "but sometimes even strong things need support." She looked away, blinking hard. They sat on an overturned crate, the barn quiet around them. After a long moment she spoke. "I don't sleep much." He nodded. "Me neither. I keep thinking if I stop moving, everything will fall apart." He was quiet for a while, then, "That's not how load-bearing works." She frowned. "What?" He picked up a beam leaning against the wall, tapped it with his knuckle. "This thing holds weight because it's braced, supported, not because it's doing all the work alone." She swallowed. "People aren't much different," he added. The words settled deep, heavy as snow on a weak roof. That evening she asked him to stay for supper. Just supper. They ate in near silence, the fire snapping low. Eli took the smaller portion without comment. Clara noticed, pretended she didn't. Afterward, he stood to leave like always. "Storm's bad," she said. She's surprising herself. "You could stay on the floor, if you want." He searched her face, careful, like he was reading something written in a language he respected. "Only if you're sure," he said. She nodded. He stayed. They slept on opposite sides of the room, fire between them, the storm howling outside like it was angry at being kept out. Clara lay awake, listening to his breathing, slow and steady, anchoring the space. For the first time since her husband died, she slept through the night. Winter deepened. Snow buried the fields completely now, erasing rows, erasing effort. Work shifted indoors, mending, planning, waiting. Eli came less often, but longer. Sometimes he brought news from town, sometimes nothing at all. One evening, while the wind rattled the windows hard enough to make Clara flinch, he spoke without looking at her. "I wasn't always a cowboy." She glanced up from her stitching. "No?" "I ran freight once, lost a partner in a blizzard, froze 10 feet from the road." His jaw tightened. "I still hear him sometimes, telling me to keep moving." She set the needle down. "Do you?" every day. Silence again. Shared. Heavy. She reached out, placed her hand over his, rough and scarred and warm. "So do I," she said softly. He turned then, eyes dark in the firelight, and for a moment the world narrowed to that look. Recognition, grief, something like hope edging its way in. He didn't kiss her. Didn't need to. Outside, winter pressed its face against the glass, relentless. Inside, something fragile and dangerous was beginning to grow, and neither of them knew yet whether it would survive the cold. The storm arrived without mercy. It began as a sound, low, distant, like the earth clearing its throat. By nightfall, the wind rose hard and sudden, rattling the windows so violently Clara thought the glass might give. Snow drove sideways, piling against the walls faster than the world could keep up with. Eli had stayed that night. Not because they planned it, because the road disappeared. They stood together at the door, watching white swallow everything beyond the fence line. The barn vanished first, then the trees, then the fence itself. The world shrank down to the house, and the dark pressed close around it. "We're not going anywhere till morning," Eli said. Clara nodded, throat tight. She'd lived through storms like this before, ones that took cattle, took roofs, took men who thought they could outrun winter. She barred the door anyway. Inside, the fire worked hard, but never quite won. The cold crept along the floor, climbed the walls, found the cracks in Clara's resolve the same way it always did. They ate quietly. When the wind howled louder, Clara flinched again. This time she couldn't hide it. Her hands shook as she reached for her cup. Eli noticed. He always noticed. "You all right?" he asked gently. She swallowed. "It's just weather." But her eyes were fixed on the window, on the shadows jumping as the flame flickered. The storm outside sounded too much like another night, another winter, another ending. She hadn't meant to remember it, but winter never asked permission. Her husband had gone out in a storm like this one, promised he'd be back before dark, promised he knew the land, promised wrong. They found him 2 days later, frozen not far from where Eli said his partner had fallen years before. She hadn't cried then either, just kept working. The house groaned. A sharp crack sounded from the back wall, wood giving under pressure. Clara stood too fast, dizzy. "The beam." "I've got it," Eli said, already moving. He braced the wall, wedged a support into place, muscles straining as the wind slammed again and again. The house held, barely. When it was over, he leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Clara stared at him, chest tight with something fierce and frightening. "You could have been hurt," she said. He shrugged. "House comes first." "No," she snapped, anger flashing hot and sudden. "You do." The words hung between them, heavier than the snow. He looked at her then, not surprised, not smug, just careful. They sat by the fire afterward, closer than before. The storm raged on, relentless, like it wanted something from them it wasn't getting. Clara's hands were clenched in her lap. "You ever get tired of carrying things alone?" Eli asked quietly. She laughed, soft, broken. "That's all I know how to do." He studied her face, the lines etched there by grief and years of refusing help. "You don't have to prove anything to me." "That's the problem," she said. Her voice cracked. She pressed her palm to her eyes like she could hold the memories back. But they came anyway. "I don't know who I am if I stop," she whispered. "If I let go, I'm afraid there'll be nothing left." Eli didn't interrupt, didn't rush her, so she kept going. "I was strong for him, for the farm, for the debt, for everyone who looked at me like I was already gone." Her breath shuddered. "And now I don't remember what it feels like to be held without feeling weak." The fire snapped loudly. Outside, the storm screamed. Eli reached out slowly like he was approaching something wild. He didn't touch her at first, just rested his hand near hers on the bench. "You're not empty," he said. "You're just tired." She shook her head. "You don't understand." "I understand more than you think," he replied. She looked up, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Then why are you still here?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because I see someone worth staying for." The dam broke. Clara folded forward, a sound tearing out of her she didn't recognize as her own. Years of held breath, of swallowed grief, of pretending she was made of iron instead of flesh. Eli caught her, arms wrapping around her solid and sure. She didn't fight it, didn't apologize. She cried into his coat while the storm battered the world, sobs shaking her down to the bone. He held her like the weight was nothing, like he'd been waiting for this moment without knowing it. When her tears slowed, he didn't let go. Neither did she. They stayed like that for a long time, firelight dancing around them, shadows merging into one. Eventually, Clara lifted her head. Her eyes met his. Something shifted, not rushed, not desperate, just honest. She leaned in first. The kiss was soft, almost hesitant, like they were testing whether the world would allow it. When it didn't end, when nothing broke, it deepened, slow and sure. Winter raged outside. Inside, warmth spread in a way no fire ever had. They slept together that night, not in hunger, not in fear, but in closeness. Wrapped in blankets, limbs tangled, breaths sinking in the quiet after the storm finally tired itself out. Morning came pale and still. Snow buried everything. The world had been remade. Clara woke with Eli's arm around her waist, his breath warm against her neck. For one panicked second, she thought of pulling away. Then she remembered. She stayed. Later, standing at the window, she watched him shovel a path through snow taller than her knees, moving steady, patient, not once complaining. Something inside her loosened. When he came back in, stamping snow from his boots, she handed him a cup of coffee. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said quietly. He met her gaze. "I want to." She nodded. "Then stay." He smiled. Not big, not loud. Just enough. Outside, winter held the land tight. Inside, for the first time in a long time, Clara Mayfield wasn't carrying everything alone. Winter does not forgive happiness. It only pauses. The knock came 3 days after the storm broke, hard, deliberate. The sound of knuckles against wood carrying a weight that didn't belong to weather or chance. Clara felt it before she heard it. That old tightening in her chest, the kind that came when the past decided it wasn't finished yet. Eli was mending a harness by the fire. He looked up once, eyes narrowing, already alert. "Don't answer," Clara said too quickly. He stood anyway. "I'll stand with you," he said. The knock came again, louder. She opened the door herself. Cold rushed in, sharp and biting, carrying with it 2 men shaped like trouble. Long coats dusted with snow, hard eyes, town men, not ranchers. One of them wore a badge that had seen too many winters to be clean. "Clara Mayfield," the taller one said. Not a question. Her jaw set. "That's me. Name's Harlan Cross," he said. "County ledger. We've come about the land." Eli stepped into view behind her, a quiet presence that shifted the balance just enough to be noticed. Cross's gaze flicked to him, lingering, measuring. "Your husband's debt," Cross continued. "Past due, past patience." Clara's hands curled into fists at her sides. "I've been paying." "Interest," Cross said. "Not the principal." She swallowed. "Winter hit hard." Cross smiled thinly. "Winter always does." The second man spoke then, voice oily. "You got 30 days. After that, property reverts." Eli's voice cut in, calm but iron-edged. "That's not lawful." Cross chuckled. "Everything's lawful if it's written by the right hand." He turned back to Clara. 30 days, or we clear you out ourselves." The door shut harder than she meant it to. The house felt smaller after they left, like it had folded inward around the threat. "They can't do that." "Do," Eli said. "They can," Clara replied quietly. "And they will." She sank into a chair, exhaustion pressing down harder than any storm. "I've been running this land on borrowed time," she admitted. "Thought if I worked hard enough, it'd forgive me." Eli crouched in front of her, hands braced on his knees. "What do you owe?" She told him. He went still. "That's robbery," he said. "That's survival," she answered. For them, silence settled, heavy with choices neither of them wanted to name. "I can sell my cabin," Eli said finally. She looked up, shocked. "No, it'd cover most of it." "That place is yours," she said fiercely. "I won't take it." "You wouldn't be taking," he replied. "You'd be standing." She shook her head. "I won't be the reason you lose everything." He met her gaze. "You already are the reason I don't feel lost." The words struck deeper than he meant them to. She stood abruptly, turning away. "This is my fight, and I'm choosing it," he said. Her shoulders sagged. That night she didn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to the house breathe, to Eli's steady presence beside her, and wondered how love could feel like both shelter and risk at the same time. Morning came gray and sharp. Eli was gone when she woke. Panic flared, fast, brutal, until she saw his note by the stove. "Gone to town. Don't wait up." She cursed him softly and set to work anyway. There was always work. The men came back before dusk. This time they didn't knock. They stood at the fence, horses snorting, Cross's smile sharper than before. "Thought you'd try something," he said when she stepped out. "You always do." Eli rode in then, dusted with snow and road, eyes hard. Cross's smile faltered. "You," he said, "didn't peg you for stupid." Eli dismounted slowly. "That makes two of us." He held out a folded paper. Cross took it, eyes scanning. His face darkened. "What's this?" Clara asked. "Deed," Eli said. "Partial ownership. Enough to stall you." Cross sneered. "You think this stops anything?" "It buys time," Eli replied. "And time changes things." Cross leaned close to Clara. "You think this man saves you? Men like him leave." Eli stepped between them. Cross spat in the snow. "We'll be back." When they rode off, the silence they left behind felt fragile. "You had no right," Clara said, voice shaking. "You risked everything." "I know," Eli said. She turned on him then, fear burning hotter than gratitude. "I didn't ask you to." He didn't raise his voice. "You didn't have to." Her anger cracked, giving way to something raw. "What if this ruins you?" she whispered. He reached for her, stopping short. "What if it saves us both?" She didn't answer. That night the wind rose again, not a storm, but a warning. They lay together, backs to the fire, the future heavy between them. "I'm scared," Clara admitted into the dark. "So am I," Eli said. She turned to him. "If this ends badly." He cut her off gently. "Then it ends honestly." She pressed her forehead to his chest, breathing him in. Winter pressed close outside, unforgiving. But for the first time, Clara didn't feel alone in the fight. She felt chosen, and that scared her more than any debt ever had. Winter saved its sharpest test for last. The morning the men returned, the sky was clear and colorless, the kind of cold that didn't announce itself with snow, but with stillness. Every sound carried too far. Every breath felt watched. Clara felt it in her bones before she saw them. 3 riders this time. Cross rode in the middle. They stopped at the fence like they owned the ground beneath their horses. The snow there was trampled, scarred, already claiming the shape of what was about to happen. Eli stood beside Clara on the porch, coat buttoned high, jaw set. No rifle in his hands, no theatrics, just presence. 30 days aren't up, Eli said. Cross smiled. Ledger changed. Clara stepped forward. "You don't get to rewrite time." "Men like me do," Cross replied. He held up a folded paper. "Foreclosure's been expedited. Debt sold. New owner wants you gone before spring." The word "gone" landed like a sentence. Eli took the paper, read it once, then folded it carefully and handed it back. "No," he said. Cross's eyes hardened. "You don't say no to winter, son." Eli met his gaze. "Watch me." There was a moment, long, thin, stretched to the edge of breaking, where Clara thought guns might come out. That this would end the way so many stories did, loud, bloody, final. Instead, something else happened. Cross dismounted. He stepped into the snow, boots crunching deliberate like he wanted to be seen, wanted to be remembered. "You think you're saving her," he said quietly. Voice meant only for them. "But land like this eats men alive. She'll bury you same as the last one." Clara flinched. Eli didn't. He stepped down from the porch, placing himself fully between Cross and Clara, shoulders squared, unmoving. "She didn't bury anyone," he said. "Winter did." Cross laughed, sharp and humorless. "Winter's just an excuse people use when they don't want to say the truth." Eli's voice didn't rise. "Truth is, you don't own suffering. You just profit from it." Cross studied him for a long moment. Then his gaze slid to Clara. "You could walk away," he said. "Come to town. Start clean. Let this freeze over behind you." Clara's answer surprised even herself. "This land is where I learned how to survive," she said. "And where I learned I don't have to do it alone." Cross sighed, disappointed. "Stubborn, then." He mounted his horse. "This isn't over," he said. "But winter always ends." The riders turned and left, their tracks cutting ugly lines across the clean snow. When they were gone, Clara's knees gave out. Eli caught her, holding her upright until the shaking stopped. "I thought," she started. "I know," he said softly. They stood there a long time, the house behind them, the future unclear but no longer faceless. That night, Clara made a decision she'd been circling for years. She took down her husband's coat, folded it, laid it to rest. Then she turned to Eli, heart pounding not with fear, but with resolve. "I don't want to survive anymore," she said. "I want to live." He took her hands, rough thumbs brushing her knuckles. "Then let's build something winter can't take." They spent the remaining weeks of winter doing just that, not grand gestures, small ones. Eli moved his things in slowly, respectfully, like he was joining a rhythm already in place, not trying to replace it. Clara learned how to rest without guilt, how to let mornings arrive without dread. They planned, counted, worked. When Cross returned one final time, the land had changed, not the soil, the people on it. Papers were signed, boundaries redrawn, a partnership forged not by law alone, but by choice. Enough backing from town, enough eyes watching now to keep vultures cautious. Cross left without a word. Spring would come, but winter had already lost. On the last night of frost, they stood together in the field where Clara had once worked herself raw, the ground softening beneath their boots, the sky paling toward dawn. "You remember the first thing you said to me?" she asked. Eli smiled faintly. "You told me to get back on my horse." She nodded. "And you told me you'd carry the load." He looked out across the land, breath steady. "Still will." She leaned into him, head resting against his shoulder. "I won't make you," she said. He wrapped an arm around her, solid, warm, unyielding. "Good. I'm choosing it." Snow melted quietly around them, sinking back into the earth it had tried to claim. Winter receded, not defeated, but answered. And in its wake stood two people who had learned the hardest truth of all. Love wasn't about being saved. It was about standing together when the cold came, and knowing neither of you had to face it alone.